that for everyone in the back? Hi. Thanks for making it through the rain, through the pouring rain, even though we've had some really bright sunshiny days. Thank you so much for making it out. It's nice to be at Pan Macmillan, isn't it? Gorgeous offices. It's my first time here. Thanks for having us.
Well, we're here all the time.
So bear with us. We've got one mic to pass between us. So format for today is welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll be talking to people from various different disciplines from Pan Macmillan. We will have time for a bit of Q&A just at the end. So this whole section will last about an hour, and we'll have time for a bit of like really informal mingling at the end. Just got some snacks and drinks and stuff. So hopefully you guys can stick around. Some of the panelists will also try and stay around as well. So if you've got direct burning questions for them that we didn't get to in the Q&A, you can sort of save them up. And then if there's anything else, again, that we really don't get to today, you can drop us an email at info@creativeaccess.org.uk. I'll repeat all of this, don't worry. Just to make sure that you guys get the absolute most out of this experience. But a big hi, hello from me. If I haven't met some of you before, I'm Ella Darlington, Head of Comms and Marketing at Creative Access. And for anyone who might be unfamiliar with Creative Access and what we're all about, we are a diversity, equity and inclusion social enterprise. We've been operating for about 11 years, and what we aim to do is try and make the UK creative industries as representative as it can be. So Pan Macmillan are one of our fabulous partners in publishing, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with you guys. But I wanted to flag a few things up front. If we, by some luck and fate, get a fire alarm emergency, there's green light just over there. So by the lifts, there's some stairs, we go down, go out the front, and then it's left and left again just underneath the arches. Probably won't happen, but you never know. And I also wanted to signpost that there's a editorial internship opportunity live on our website at the moment. It's within the brands and media team specialising in children's at Pan Macmillan. The deadline of that is the 27th of this month. So have a look, see if you're interested, and if it aligns with what you're keen to do, and throw your hat on if you fancy it. Yeah, let's get on with the conversation. So I'm joined by, as I said, a very vast array of different people from different disciplines within Pan Macmillan. We're joined by Andy Ioannou, who is Digital Development Director, and he will tell you exactly what that means. We've got Samia Gundakali, who's the editor at Pan Mac for Children's. And we've got Laura Marlowe, who's a senior audio editor as well. Very interesting segment. And she's going to tell us all about how that works in line with print. So let's get cracking, shall we? First of all, we are going to just have a bit of an intro, get to know you guys and get to understand exactly who you are and what you do in your role at the moment. I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of you already and know lots of interesting things about your stories, but I know that none of you have exactly the same route into the industry, so we'd love to dig into that a little bit and just kind of tell people about the various different ways that you can access publishing. So, Andy, you're right next to me. Why didn't you kick us off?
Ladies,
No, I'm looking directly at you. We want to hear all about your journey in and a little bit about what you do as part of your job day today. Yeah?
this is the part where you're like, what is your title? What does it mean? And I'm going to tell you everything. So my route into publishing is very different to you both. I started here coming from magazine publishing. I thought magazines and books wouldn't be too dissimilar. I was very, very wrong. They are worlds apart, and magazines do not count as the publishing industry. I've since learned from people in book publishing, though magazine people will tell you otherwise. I did not go to uni. My parents divorced when I was 17, and my dad was the breadwinner. He did not want to support my family anymore, so I needed to find work really, really quickly, start earning some cash money, and found work as a community manager at Hearst magazines. And this was before social media, which sounds like I'm ancient. I'm not that ancient, but because of social media, my role evolved away from community management, which is moderating things like forums and message boards, making sure people aren't posting terrible, terrible things, into audience development, which has now seen me write for approximately 14 years, giving away a little bit of my age there. So my role here is looking after all of our digital media. So that's your social media platforms, your TikToks, your Instagrams, your Facebooks, Twitters, Twix, and organic. So that's your posting, your video strategy, but also, and the biggest part of my role is the paid and getting the books into the hands of as many people as possible.
Brilliant. And would you say that there's things that you took from your previous role and applied them to this one? And if so, what?
Yes, I'm trying to think what those were. I have taken a lot of the people skills that I learned, and also one of the similarities between magazine publishing and book publishing, which I didn't realize at the time, is that people are very scared of the digital sphere. They are frightened that they're going to break something. They don't understand it. Like when I got here, people were like, what is a tweet? What do we even do that for? Why are you here? And just needing to sit down with people and explain to them, this is the reason we do things, this is the benefit we have, and this is why we do it, is not dissimilar to the magazine world.
Awesome. And Samia, we've got also the benefit of you being a Creative Access alumni, and as I'm looking around the room, I can also spot some Creative Access alumni as well, so welcome. And yeah, just really interested to hear about your experience, what you have to say about working with Creative Access as well. Like, what was that like, and what does your role entail at the moment?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. This is really cool, and it's really awesome to see so many of you here. So my journey started back in 2016, and I did a history degree, and I initially thought I wanted to go into journalism. And I think probably about 2 or 3 months into that degree, I knew that it wasn't for me. And then even by the time I graduated, I still had no clue about what it was that I wanted to go into. And it was around that time that I very fortuitously came across Creative Access and just started applying for loads of jobs in the creative industries, and essentially kind of came upon publishing by chance. So I got a job at the Society of Authors. That was my Creative Access internship. And my role there, I started off as on reception, and then moved into the prizes and the awards team. So it's already kind of a varied experience within that one organisation. And we managed and administered a children's book prize. And it was when publishers were sending in children's books for that prize that I realised, wow, it would be really cool to actually work on children's books and be part of the creative process. So that was probably around 2017, 2018, that's when I actually started applying for jobs in children's publishing. And was very, very lucky to get a job as an editorial assistant at Ladybird Books in 2018, and then moved to Pan Mac in 2022 as an editor. And in my role now, so I work for the Campbell Books team, and we make novelty books for kids aged 0 to 5. So basically what that means is we make interactive books, things like lift the flaps, pop-up books, touch and feel books. So yeah, I feel very lucky to have a very fun job. And as an editor, I would say just generally, it is kind of like a project management job. So you're kind of overseeing the book all the way from acquisition, all the way to sending the book to print, and you're working with so many different teams along the way.
And we'll get more onto advice around accessing the industry in a second, but I think it would be really useful for you to maybe expand a little bit on that process where you were applying for lots of roles within publishing, and maybe a bit about what that felt like and what helped you to stand out when you became successful.
Yeah, great question, because I think it can be really draining, and especially at that early stage where you don't really have that much of a touch point what the industry is, what it's like, and you just feel like you're not getting anywhere. It can take a lot of strength to kind of keep persisting, but I think what really comes across, and even when it comes to kind of putting together your application, is just that sheer passion and enthusiasm for the job, and also, especially at entry level roles, just like a willingness to learn. I think that always comes across really well, and just showing that you're really keen to kind of take in as much as you can from the industry. You're here to learn. Even years into the job, I'm still learning so much. So yeah, I think it's very tricky. It is challenging at those early stages, but I would just say to keep going, and you're kind of you even being here and engaging is so important.
Awesome. And Laura, you're part of the Goldsmiths University Massive, aren't you? We've got some Goldsmiths representation in the room tonight. But yeah, tell us about your journey sort of like since then, and a little bit about the world of audio, because I feel like it's still an area that some may not know loads about.
Yeah, thank you. So I sort of started my publishing journey in 2017 in my final year at Goldsmiths. I sort of did a work placement module where I managed to get a placement at Pan Macmillan in the children's team, in the children's editorial team. And sort of following that, I applied for a children's editorial assistant job. I didn't actually end up getting that, but then I went for the audio assistant role. So it was a sort of brand new role in the team. It was just when sort of audio was starting to take off and become the exciting thing that it is today. So that was back in 2017. I stayed at Pan Mac for 2 years, and then went off to Penguin Random House, the audio team there as editor, before coming back to Pan Macmillan as senior editor for the audio team now. And so what I do day to day is kind of work on the casting and production for all of the titles across all of our lists. So that's children's, adult, non-fiction, fiction, and yeah, getting the audiobooks into as many listeners, getting it out there as much as possible, really. And it's it's one of the fastest growing formats of publishing, so a really exciting area, and it's continuing to grow. So I mean, it's something that I sort of never thought I'd get into when I started my publishing journey. I thought, editorial, it would be really want to work out about editorial, but it's just, one thing I would say is to be as kind of open-minded as possible, and I think there's all sorts of different areas of publishing, not just
we're like a relay team, so we're gonna, as I said, dig a little bit more into what helps people to stand out in that application process, and that may be, whether you're at an entry level, you've got a few years experience under your belt, maybe it's publishing, maybe it's not, or you're quite experienced and you're in another industry entirely and you're thinking, is publishing for me? So we're going to try and touch on advice for all of those different scenarios. But I'm really interested to ask the open question to the group. What exactly is it when you're in the position of a hiring manager in publishing? What is it that you're looking for? And what advice would you give someone who's crafting a CV or a cover letter and they're really trying to stand out? Because let's face it, it's a really competitive industry. So many folks want to work in publishing. So with our hiring hat on, what are some of the bits of advice? I know that, Andy, you're really passionate about hiring non-traditional folks, so like even people who don't come from publishing backgrounds. So what would you say?
Number one, don't use ChatGPT. This is one of the things in the role that we were hiring not a few months back, the number of people that had just put in the job description into ChatGPT and then gave us word from word what ChatGPT told us was the role and why they were good for it. We could read straight through it. It did not give the sense of passion or the desire to want to work here. And when you sent over these questions, I did look at our team, the digital team here, which works across all of the imprints and the divisions of our publishing. And we are a team of 16 people, and one person has had publishing experience. Everybody else was from outside of publishing. And some people are from agencies, other people are from things like Gray's boxes. I came from magazines. And the one thing that came across in all of their interviews is a passion for books and reading and wanting to better the world by getting books into the hands of people that need books the most. And that is my biggest piece of advice, is if you love reading and if you love books, put that into your cover letter and talk about your favorite books. It really makes the difference. And you can tell when you're being authentic and when you're not.
Great advice. Laura, you're itching to say something, or?
I can really echo what Andy said there. You know, I also don't think you necessarily don't need publishing experience for an entry-level job at all. I'm more interested in hearing about, you know, how you can use experience from other things, whether it was, you know, running a university newspaper or working in a hospitality job, like how those skills that you've acquired in those roles can then transfer over, because there are so many transferable skills, whether that's kind of personal skills, you know, communication, all these different things are so valuable that you can get from all sorts of experiences that aren't necessarily internships or things like that. I think that's so valuable. Also a passion for books, but also I think, you know, when you're writing your application, make it really specific for the role that you're applying for as well. So if it is an editorial role, you know, talk about specific books and things like that. If it's an audio role, talk about audiobooks and really kind of think about what the role is, what the job description is looking for, and tailor it as much as possible, because that's something that really stands out, you know, when the candidates put a lot of thought into tailoring it. So
no, totally echo everything Andy and Laura said. Just don't be afraid to be yourself in your application and like, bring your personality to it. I think obviously some roles kind of fit a bit better, but just for instance, with children publishing, it's a really fun place to be. It's a fun industry, so don't be afraid to, you know, bring that kind of sense of fun or sense of humour, in an appropriate way, obviously. But to your application, I think obviously when you think about what the hiring managers kind of going through application after application, there's obviously going to be kind of the same kind of themes running through. I think those threads really do stand out. And I think as well, when I think about kind of what useful advice I had at the start of my publishing journey, or wish I had, is just you don't feel the need to kind of make publishing your personality. If that makes sense, or kind of you don't have to kind of build this publishing brand around you. I think all your life experiences and everything outside of publishing is what makes you valuable and makes you an asset to the industry. So I think just be real and be honest and be yourself in the application.
Awesome. And if people are looking for ways to, in a free sense, raise their profile or show that they've got some kind of insight into what audiences are looking for or want, or like very often when we speak to publishers, a lot of them advise that, you know, social media is absolutely free to access, and there's lots of booktokers who have huge influence on book sales now. That's, you know, just a fact. A lot of the booktokers are skewing younger, they're skewing female, and there's been a rise in sort of like buying those kinds of media. So they're quite clearly influential, and they know what audiences want even before perhaps some publishers. So what are some other ways that are freely accessible, whether it's accessing groups online or putting themselves in positions where they can network, whether it be in person or virtual, or tapping into insights. Could you offer any advice in that respect?
So I'm actually not someone who is very active on social media, and I never really have been. I've kind of been on Twitter, and I absolutely, there's obviously merit in social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of those things, TikTok now, and kind of, you know, that's where you see those opportunities, and also the fabulous opportunities to build your network. I think the things that have been really life-changing for me have actually been things like mentoring and finding people in the industry that way. I actually was assigned a mentor through Creative Access before I got my job at Penguin, and I still remember the things that she helped me with still to this day, like just pieces of advice and just like nuggets of wisdom. And more than anything, I think, yeah, not only was it kind of building my network, but learning. She was an editor in outdoor publishing, so learning more about that part of the business. But it was just really nice having someone kind of build your confidence at that early stage. And I think what's great about building a network and being able to do that is just I think it's lovely to kind of find your personal cheerleaders in a way. And I think I really valued having a mentor. So any kind of opportunities that arise where you can access that, I really encourage.
Yeah, okay. To add some fire to the social media, because that is what keeps me in a job. I am in a lot of Facebook groups, and a lot of those Facebook groups are for people that want to enter publishing. They're asking, I've been here 7 years, so I think that they're easy questions, but then I think about when I joined, and there were so many questions that I asked, because it is such a confusing industry. It's not very transparent on the number of acronyms that are here. For full clarity for everybody in this room, when I joined here, I thought that all books came from a giant publishing house in the sky, and there wasn't this massive competition between the houses. I was very wrong. But I was asking, what is an imprint, and why do I, as a consumer, care about those? What is frontlist? What is backlist? An imprint is a division within a publishing house that does specializing in particular publishing, like Picador is our literary imprint, Bluebird is our health and well-being and lifestyle imprint. Frontlist is our new books, backlist are older books. All of those questions, I look back at and I'm like, wow, I can answer those like that now. But if I hadn't asked, nobody was going to teach me all of those things. So not shying away from asking questions, no matter how small or silly you may feel they are, was really, really helpful. And to go back to the Facebook groups, showcasing an understanding of what people are talking about and what triggers people to have an emotion with a book is really, really powerful. So when people, in the interview, I always ask, what are people reading? And they start, their eyes light up and they're like, I'm reading this page-turning thriller, it's the greatest thing I'm reading, there's twists that I couldn't see coming. And you just, when people talk about books in that way, that is a good reminder of why we do what we do.
I think also for those that are sort of starting out in publishing and very kind of early on in careers, one piece of advice from me would be to kind of be really up for getting involved in any kind of events, going, putting yourself out there, getting involved, building a network kind of as soon as possible, because that's, for me, how I sort of ended up moving to different publishers and kind of progressing in that way. It was definitely through kind of going to events, having chance conversations with people as well, as much as kind of it was getting into publishing in the first place. I think that's so important, building a really strong network. And yeah, it can happen through, going to book launches events or just going to social events and chatting to colleagues. It doesn't need to be a big thing, but it's all so important, I think. Yeah.
And let's get a bit specific for anyone who's got a few years experience under their belt, or they've made a bit of headway in another industry and they're looking curiously over the fence at publishing and thinking, could this be a space for me? I mean, do you know people within Pan Macmillan who've got that story? I mean, Andy, you're kind of one of them, aren't you, who switched from one industry to the other? What can those people be doing to, I guess, A, tie a kick where the publishing is for them, and also B, when they're thinking about putting themselves forward for opportunities, what are some of the things that could be helpful for hiring managers to see those people showcasing if they've got some experience, but it's maybe just not in the industry?
I, having lived this experience, what I did in my interview is at the time, 7 years ago, I think we were going through the Maze Runner series, which is obviously based on a book, but not one that Pan Macmillan published. I've since learned. But one of the things that I did at interview was, I'm a huge film lover, film and TV, I'm there. I love books. I was like, well, a way to get people who don't normally, and this is something that Book Talk has been really, really good at, is getting people that don't normally read into reading, is showcasing an understanding of how people consume media and then getting them to apply that to books. So although The Maze Runner was based on a book, we knew, or I thought, that there was a big opportunity to get people that were just going to see the latest blockbuster into reading for the first time and then taking them on that journey. So I would say the skill set that helped me do that was looking at the audience, understanding their needs, and then applying reading and books to them.
Same question.
I guess, yeah, main takeaway is that it's definitely possible to pivot. And I know of so many people who have had that journey. My best friend started in sales and is now a commissioning editor. And I think the knowledge that and the kind of relationships that you bring from a certain team will always be valuable to the team that you move on to. And yeah, I just kind of anecdotally even know so many stories like that. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other pieces of advice.
I think it's very interesting from an audio point of view as well, because audio crosses over with so many other areas as well. It's not just publishing, it's working with actors, it's working with talent, there's sound editing, all sorts of different things that cross over this. So in our team, our audio exec, who started a couple of years ago as an assistant, he actually had a music background, so he did a music degree, and then I think did masters, and then he was working with one of the studios that we record with a lot. So that was kind of his route in, which was really kind of interesting, not kind of classic English degree going into editorial. And yeah, I think it's just sort of highlighting and sort of looking at what skills you can bring to the business that somebody might not be able to who's already in publishing. And there's so much in that. And I think it's really important. It's something that we look out for a lot, and especially but across the business as well.
Yes, and definitely agree with all of that. And I think if you are thinking of kind of sidestepping, you are already in the industry, don't be afraid to kind of reach out to anybody who is already working in that role, working in that team. Just ask them for a really casual coffee or catch up, and kind of go practice questions, show that you're keen, show that you're eager, and not only building your network that way, but if there is ever a role that comes up in that team, then they're kind of thinking of you and they know that you're interested. So definitely don't be afraid to put yourself out there as well.
And similarly, thinking again about our team, one of the people in my team, Will, he came from Springer Nature, which is one of our sister companies, but for education, textbooks and things like that. Very different to traditional publishing, selling books for pleasure. And one of the things, and he was in HR in Springer Nature, so quite different. One piece of advice I would say to anybody looking to pivot industries is don't be tied to one particular team, The dream, I've since learned since being here, everybody wants to be an editorial, and that is great. We love our editorial colleagues. It's often the most in demand. If you have a skill set that applies to publicity or marketing or sales or audio or anything, try that route first, get your feet in the door, see if you like it, and if you do, great, you've got the role already, and if you don't, certainly at Pan Macmillan, we're very open to secondments and letting people shadow other departments to see if that's more their thing. It's a lot easier to move into other teams once you're already in the door.
Brilliant. And also for anyone who needs a bit of a refresher on CVs, like you just haven't touched your CV in ages, or you're just starting out and you're putting one together, we do have around once a month. We've got one live at the moment that you can sign up to, but once a month we have our HR team who put on a brilliant virtual CV and cover letter writing workshop that's free to attend. I think it's only about an hour, and it's a kind of casual group setting. You get to ask questions directly, and there's a bit of a presentation where they'll talk you through best practices. But there's such a smart bunch of people who are delivering that session, where they look at CVs hundreds daily, so they know exactly what they're talking about. Right, let's get into a little bit more of like what the future of the industry is going to look like. And I want to kind of start off with, we spoke a little bit about book talk, but I really want to get into like audience analysis. Like, it's something that, you know, as you said, when you joined, people were like, what on earth is a tweet? Like, why are you here? What's the purpose? Has that moved on? Are people seeing the value of digital more? And, you know, what other teams are you responsible for informing? Like, how do you use that data? How do you action that data if you are collecting it in a digital capacity? Let's dig into that a little bit.
It's a big question. The digital team here feeds into every department at some point in the publishing cycle. How do we use data? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of recent memory. We have a lot of Pan Macmillan social channels, relatively small, but once we factor in our authors' channels, we become much, much bigger. We have access to all of those releases, so we can talk directly to them. When we are at cover stage or designing the cover, we can do some tests on social to see what shout lines or what messaging works best.
What's a shout line?
A shout line is the thing that draws you into the book. So one of my favorite shout lines working here was read between the lies, which you just want to jump in and find out who's lying, why they're lying. So testing those shout lines and seeing which one got people to take an action the most. We did this with colorways as well. So outdoor advertising was yellow because that was what social media audiences were responding to, more so than the blue, the purple, the green, etc., etc. So those are some ways that we've informed. I don't think that anybody can question the impact of digital book talk and the move and power it has over the industry at the moment. We're seeing exactly as you said, Ella, new people coming in. Romance is thriving. There's this new term, which I personally don't like, but it's going around the office like wildfire. Romantasy is a real thing. Romantasy is a real term that people are now publishing into. And those are people that were previously underserved, you know, they were always there perhaps, but TikTok has made them find their voice. They're finding similar people. They are getting recommendations for books and other forms of media that they'll love. So yeah, people have had their eyes open to the power of digital in a great way. Is this where I can move on to something else that I think is going to change in the industry? I'm going to look at Laura.
I'm curious, go on.
Yeah, so I am personally very excited about Spotify's entry into the audiobook market, because if there is one player that may challenge the biggest player in the audiobook market. It's going to be the world's biggest music streaming platform. Laura, what are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's so exciting. And I think, it's going to change a lot of things in audio. And I think one of the most exciting things is it opening up audiobooks to, non-traditional book buying audiences and people who might not have even ever thought of listening to audiobooks, but they've got a Spotify membership and suddenly they can listen to audiobooks as part of that. And interestingly, a good percentage of Spotify's audience are between the ages of 18 to 34. So I think we're going to see, a real kind of shift there. And I think, it's only recently launched, so it launched sort of towards the end of last year, but there's a lot of excitement kind of across the industry, and it's a lot of excitement in-house, and I think we're going to see that as something that's going to really, really shake up the audio industry.
Andy, you totally scooped my question on the future of audio. But I love that. I love that inside information as to Spotify being the key player. I love that. And just to unpick audio a little bit as well. Hands up, who's got a Spotify account? Yeah, huge opportunity for people to switch from music listener to potentially book listener. Well, also, hands up, is anyone actually listening to books using Spotify already? Yeah, maybe like a third of the room. And that might hike up in the next few years. What else do you think has been behind the shift with audio increasing in importance? When you said that when you first joined that audio was just on that incline. So what else do you think has been behind it?
I think one of the main things is the kind of ease of access. People are able to listen while they're doing other things. It's that multitasking element as well. So kind of listening when you're at the gym or you're kind of doing chores and things. I think that's really kind of driven it, especially sort of through the pandemic. We saw a real rise in audio then. But I also think the quality of the content that's being created now, and also the sort of experience that an audiobook offers. Listening to an author, or a celebrity that you love, reading their own memoir. I think there's something really kind of powerful and special in that kind of makes it almost like unique experience separate to the printed book. So in some cases, you'll get people buying the physical book and the audio book, so they want to listen to the voice of that person. I think obviously touching on retailers with Spotify, but I think there's lots of new children's retailers that are entering the market and kind of broadening the audience in that way as well. I don't know if anyone's had Yoto cards, but there's cute little cards that you can put in the machine that look like a kind of tape, sort of similar to a tape cassette player. And that's kind of a new way of kids accessing audio as well. So there's lots of kind of new retailers entering the market as well, and it's really growing that audience in that way too. So a really, really exciting area of publishing, and definitely one to watch if you're interested in it.
I also want to give some airtime to children, because I feel like children is one of those areas of publishing that I maybe know less about because I don't have a child. I was a child, but it's changed since then. It's changed so much. And as you were saying, audio is now a thing, where these audio programs or things that, children can use Pesta Power and buy are like reading children bedtime stories instead of, parents doing it. So it's totally different from when we were kids. But I think what I'm keen to understand about children specifically is more about the life of bringing a children's product to market, and what is that looking like now? And as you said, there's loads of different various formats. What's involved in the life of a children's books? I think that's just an area that we know a little bit less about.
Definitely, and I know when I started in the industry, I couldn't know anything at all, and it's been such a huge learning curve. I think definitely one of the most interesting things I think we've been kind of experiencing at the minute is just how the cost of living has trickled down to books and to children's books. Obviously, people don't have as much disposable income to spend on books, but also one thing that I didn't necessarily know about the industry is just kind of how involved the process of kind of costing a children's book is and what goes into that. So obviously the team I work on will make novelty books, and so there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of expensive things that might go into that book. But I think the challenge then, the challenge that comes is still making sure that book is accessible. It's not too expensive, and you want to essentially get it into the hands of as many readers as possible. So that's definitely been a challenge. And I think another thing is just kind of, when you talk about the life cycle and how long it takes to actually see the book come to fruition. We're kind of working right now, we'll be working on books that are publishing in 2025, 2026. We're looking really far forward. And again, then the challenge comes of kind of how do we hit trends? How do we make that work? A lot of our books will be shipping, from China, so there's kind of logistical things to think about, and financial things. So in terms of predicting trends and kind of problem solving to make sure that you still are able to get books to market, that's definitely kind of a huge learning thing.
And also, I mean, we're at an event and we ourselves, Creative Access, have a real core mission around representation. And it feels like when you look at bookshelves at the moment, there seems to be a bit more representation. I don't know if you're also feeling that and, part of driving that within the industry. Do we think that that's going to proliferate and like our audience is reacting to that? Can you give us a little bit of insight from the inside?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even within the last 5-6 years, you can absolutely see there has been a major shift in representation, especially in children's books. It is so important that kind of kids. It's part of the reason why I went into children's as well and kind of stayed in this part of the industry. And I wanted to make books that I necessarily didn't have when I was growing up. And kind of the impact of seeing yourself represented in those books can be so powerful. And I think that's kind of come on leaps and bounds of kind of, the industry's, tapping into previously untapped markets and realizing there's actually a lot of financial scope there as well. And I think in terms of kind of looking towards the future, what would be great to see, I think there's a lot of books that were kind of from creators of colour that kind of explore themes of race and culture, which is incredibly important and are absolutely necessary. But I think looking ahead, I think what I'd like to see more of, and it's kind of starting to trickle through, is just kind of keep people writing their own stories. But kind of digressing here, but I don't know how many people saw One Day on Netflix. But what I found really refreshing about that series is that they cast a South Asian actress in this series, and they never really made it about her race. And I thought that was quite refreshing to see, and kind of to then now see that trickle down into books, and just making sure that we're giving these creators of colour a platform, and so that they can write and draw things about things that they, whatever they want to write about. I think it'd be really great to see more of that in the future.
Awesome. I'm going to pose one more question to the panel. So while we're doing this, do you start to think about any burning questions that you've got for the three wonderful people that we've got here tonight? I kind of want to dig a little bit more into BookTokers, and also just to understand, like, is it a one-way street or is it two-way? Do you work with them? Can you influence the influencers? How does that work? And why are they so successful, I guess? And well, I mean, people might not want to admit, but have we got any BookTokers in the room? Or we have. Nice. Amazing. All right, well, let's try and get some content made with them after. But
Everything's an opportunity.
How do you work with them? Can you influence the influencers, and why are they so successful?
Can you influence a BookToker? I'm going to ask you in the audience, can we influence? No, I'm not going to, that's very mean. We can only we give them the content that we have. We work with influencers, whether they're Instagrammers, YouTubers, BookTokers, on a daily basis. And we give them early access books, and we hope that they love them. But I think some of the power that comes from BookTok and influencers in general is their authentic voice. You know, if I got sent free stuff and said, yeah, this is the greatest thing of all time, but actually it's the worst thing of all time, nobody's going to follow me, nobody's going to trust the word that I say, nobody's going to buy anything that I try to sell them later. So we work with influencers in a pretty unique way, to my knowledge, in publishing, in that we don't just do mass mail outs of books to our content. We send out a newsletter once a month to everybody on our list and say, these are the books that have come into the office. Which ones of these would you like? Occasionally, there'll be some special merch attached to those. We've created for Fall of Wrath and Ruin. Almost forgot that book. Fall of Wrath and Ruin, we created a fan. I've gone digital, as you can see here, but it was one of those manual fans, blue flames and dragons on it. And we'll put a note in that newsletter to say, if you request this book, you might also get some additional merch. And people just love free stuff, but more importantly, they love the books. Yeah. They love the books. Often they are requesting books by authors that they've read before, and then they will make content not because we've asked them to or because we've paid them to, but because they love the content and they want to support the authors and their material. In other ways, there are monetary ways that we work with influencers. We had a example. I'm going to give you an example here. There's a book on the table that people can take later called The Little Life. I'm sure everybody here has heard of The Little Life. It is huge on TikTok, mostly because people just video themselves crying and they're absolutely devastated every time they turn the page. And we have seen a real sales uplift year on year because of the power of BookTok. We reached out to a number of these people who have been crying and said, we'd love to send you a pack of branded tissues. We would also love to, we call it Spark Ads. And Spark Ads are when you generate an advertiser code on the video that has done well, and we can put some cash money behind it to make it go even further. The influencer gets increased video views, they get the followers, they get all of the engagement, and we get the exposure of our books. And we have found that that's worked really, really well, particularly for A Little Life, but for a number of other books. And have I answered your question?
Brilliantly.
Wonderful. Then I'm going to do this.
That's really interesting. There's loads that I didn't know about how publishers work with BookTokers. Right, I'm going to open it up for audience questions. We've already had a few that people have submitted, but I'm seeing a hand pop up there. Do you want to, because we've already got one mic, so I'm worried that it's going to go all the way to the back and all the way to the front. Do you want to boldly shout out your question? I'll try and repeat it because we are also recording, and then we'll hopefully answer it really well.
This is mainly aimed at Laura, but I don't mind if anyone else chips in. Do you feel, how do you feel about the potential future impact of AI on audiobooks and the way that it's going to change or could change voice acting and the editing process?
Awesome. So just to repeat that for the recording, it's how do you feel about the future potential influence of AI on audio specifically as a medium, audiobooks?
Great question. And it is a huge topic right now in the audio industry. And I think, the rate at which AI is changing things, even over the past kind of 6 months, is crazy. And actually, it's interesting to see where it's going to start going. There's lots of AI companies that are starting to kind of experiment with creating kind of synthetic voices, obviously with the consent of actors as well, and creating audiobooks in that way. So it's interesting. I mean, it's, at the moment it can take us, depending on the length of the book, it can take kind of 3 days, 4 days with an actor in the studio to record an audiobook. And with some of these AI companies, it can take a matter of a few hours. But I think the thing that obviously I think is the main sticking point really is quality, really, because we really, and audio publishers in general pride ourselves on creating the highest quality audiobooks for our authors. And AI, I have to say personally, it isn't there yet really, and it's you can really tell it's robotic. It doesn't sound like a human, and I think there's something really special in that for an author giving a performance of their work and sort of bringing their view to it and everything that they've got to that performance. And AI just isn't there yet. I think it'd be interesting to see how it develops and how the industry responds to that. But I think the other main thing really is ethics and making sure that there is that consent there across the board with actors. Because some actors are starting to think about, maybe that's a route I'll go down in terms of cloning voices. But it's early days, and I think it's something that the industry is keeping an eye on. So yeah, watch this space and we'll see what happens with it.
Really good question. Oh, heaps of hands going up, but I know that you did put your hand up first, so go ahead.
Sure. Thanks for all the info so far. Just wanted to ask, how closely do you think, when you're talking about your passion for books, how closely does that need to be aligned with the imprint specifically you're applying to? So say you really like literary fiction, but then maybe you're going for a non-fictional romance role. What does that look like? Do you need to shift yourself to be better aligned?
Good question. So you might have a passion for one style of literature, but you might be applying for a slightly different sector. How do you bridge the gap between the two is the question.
Yeah, great question. I think it's important to acknowledge where your passion lies, first and foremost. But I think if possible, if you have kind of any extracurricular activities, hobbies, things that you can do to supplement while you're applying for that job in non-fiction, for instance, and kind of how that sparks your interest in that role, then it would be really great to pull that out, because I think it is really important to still show the person that's hiring you that kind of why they should hire you and kind of what you bring to that role. So I think definitely still acknowledge the kind of the general passion and love for the genre that you have, but definitely still try and kind of tailor it to the actual role that you're applying for, and bring that inspiration from wherever it is in your life. Whether it's a TV show that you watch, and can draw that inspiration from so many different places.
Brilliant. And also, I mean, a lot of the cheat codes, I guess, to applying for a job are often in the listing or the job description themselves. So I think demonstrating passion for that sector is really key, and it's really important, and quite rightly, as Andy, as you said, that needs to come through. But there's a whole host of other skills and disciplines that you will also need to showcase too. So I think, give equal weighting in your application to trying to demonstrate whether it's transferable or like a direct relation to that skill or buzzword, but just stay really true to what they've listed. And as an example, the Pan Macmillan editorial internship is within the brands and media team, specifying in children's. They've said things like things like passion for children's literature. So again, that would be the piece about bridging that gap if you don't already have experience in that. But they've also said person needs to be highly numerate, good verbal and written communication, and keenness to learn new tools and skills. So giving equal weighting to all of the demonstrating all of those things in your application, for sure. But really good question. Yes, you're locked in. Really good question.
All the information so far, especially the do's of what to do, but what would you say is a red flag or don't that you would see on a cover letter or a CV that you instantly
So I want to make sure we get a few more questions in. That's a really good question. Was there another hand up as well? We'll try to pull two in one go. Yes.
What advice would you give to someone who's got 10 years post-university work experience and wanting to make the transition into the publishing industry? Would you say that it has entry level, or would it be a mid-level role?
Would you be able to volunteer what sector it is as well? Education. So we've got one question about what are the don'ts, and one question about pivoting. What advice would you give? Does it need to be considering entry, or can you think about different levels?
I'm going to try and answer both of these questions, not to hold them. The first one was about don'ts, red flags. Having gone through very many applications for people who have applied here, the first, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. This is a new thing with the introduction of AI. Don't put your cover letter or the job listing into ChatGPT or other generative AI programs and then let it write it and then send it exactly as it is, because it's no good. It reads like it's AI, much like Laura was saying about things sounding like AI. You really can tell. And it's fine to use AI to get some help and some assistance or some ideas, but don't just lift AI. Another thing that I've seen many people do when applying here is start a cover letter. Dear Sir, Madam, I'm really excited to apply for this role at Penguin Random House. We are, make sure you're applying, what you're saying is for the right house or the right place that you're applying. I know this sounds really, really basic, but I've seen so many applications we just discard because it's like, okay, you've not taken the time to even address where you're applying for. What I'm going to give a little bit of a leg up as well as the negative. One of the things that I really value when people apply for roles here is when they apply their lived experience to the skill sets that are in the job spec and saying, well, I'm a really good communicator. This is how I'm a good communicator because I dealt with this really challenging person in my sales job and I managed to bring them down and they came back and bought more things. So lean on your lived experience where possible. Second question was about does anybody needing making a pivot after many years of postgraduate experience need to be entry level should they want to come into publishing? No. I am a good example of this. I came here in a manager role and all of the team that I've hired, some of them are entry level roles, but a lot of them are senior roles. And like I said at the very beginning, one person has had publishing experience, everybody else is from outside of the industry. And as long as they can showcase the skill sets that they need for the role, even if it's not directly tied to publishing, you do not need to be in publishing to get a role at any level, whether that's entry, mid, senior.
It's a really simple one just to keep in mind for the CV and cover letter question, but just length of cover letter and CV and just making sure that you're trying to be I know you're trying to cram in as much as you can, but try and also be as succinct as possible, because I can imagine sitting through so many applications, and I think if you're able to kind of tell that story in kind of a neat and simple way, and that comes across well.
Awesome. Right, we've probably got time for one more question, and we can chill, stretch out a bit, have a bit of networking time. Oh, go on, we'll do two in one. Yes.
Hi, yeah, thanks for the talk. It's very, very cool. I enjoyed everyone speaking. I'll just be very quick. I've recently started applying for jobs in publishing. I just graduated, and I've discovered a new second step after the CV, which is a lot of companies using technology like higher view and stuff like that, which I find very daunting and stressing. I've never been able to get past that specific hurdle. I just wanted to know if you guys had any advice about dealing with these kinds of new age well, not new age hippie, but new age technology when expressing yourself in your roles. Yeah.
And then the other question. Our resident book club.
I am on the fantasy journey.
Heard it twice.
Great question. Yes, also don't forget people who are joining questions. Yes, go on, Tom.
So I've got a question from Amira, who says, I've been shortlisted for many editorial assistant roles, so I know I'm capable, but because I'm based outside of London, where most of the publishing houses are based, I'm left at a disadvantage. How can I set myself apart and make myself more valuable and deserving of the relocation hassle?
Nice one. So we've got the first one, high view barrier. We've got, we'll end on that one because that was a really lovely one to end on. But Amira's one was around location and access to the industry. Also, I would just address the one with Amira just really quickly and hand the mic over to the team as well. Lots of publishing houses do have and welcome flexible working. Not all of them have, a designated number of days in the office. I do know that the internship that we've got with Pan Macmillan is 3 days in the office a week, so I believe that's London hub. But spread your look and spread your net across looking at traditional and non-traditional types of publishing. There's lots of hubs and also indies as well, based all around the UK. So don't just think that your end goal is to absolutely be at X place. Think about diversifying where you look. But I'm definitely going to pass the mic across. So just a reminder of the questions. One's about regional folks tapping the industry. Another one was about higher view, getting around that kind of getting through that process. How do you shine? And the third one will end, which is what you do. Sammy, I think you had a point about the higher viewpoint.
Only that was just actually quite a repressed memory. My higher view. So it's essentially it's kind of like the first stage interview where you are being interviewed by the computer. You don't have someone else on the other side of the screen, and you basically have prompts that flash up, and you've got about 30 seconds. Or, I don't know, you have a bit of time to think about the answer, and then the camera comes on, and you're recorded, and you have one take, and you have to give your answer, and that's what gets submitted. Really tough, and I think we're not used to it as well. It's just feels quite surreal, kind of talking to the computer screen. I don't know, in terms of advice, I think maybe just even kind of practicing the questions to yourself and just talking to yourself when you're practicing on family members and kind of getting into the habit of just answering the questions, I think would definitely help hopefully build kind of confidence of having to do those interviews. But I totally recognise that it is a bit of a strange a strange setup. But the more that you more you do them, and the more that you have that practice of answering these questions and kind of building the question bank in a way. I think always make note of the questions that you're asked in those interviews, because they very well might come up in real life interviews too. Hopefully it should get easier.
I think that's good addressing of the question. And the other one was just about regional folks tapping the industry. If we've got any advice on that, obviously I did mention a few things, but if anyone's got anything to add.
Brian is gone, so I can say whatever I want to say now without fear of reprimanding. I would say that you're on the TV, so I'm going to look at the webcam. I would say we, the wider publishing industry, not doing the best they can to make particularly entry-level roles accessible to as many people as possible. I think that is a fair statement. We certainly have work that we can do here. I think all of your advice was spot on. 10 out of 10, you can stay. It's challenging, but I think silent. It never happens. It never happens to me. I would say try to find something that is around the area that you are in. And if you can't and something is in London that you really want, try to negotiate in your interview. You know, if you've been offered a role, you already have a little bit of power that you can use as leverage. You know, I travel in, not me personally, one of the people in my team travels in from Milton Keynes every day, and that's a lot of money, particularly this is an entry level role as well. So we have made arrangements for that person to come in once or twice a week instead of the 3 days, because we saw the value of her in her role and really wanted to get her on board that actually being in the office 3 days a week, you know, we could negotiate on that.
Awesome, right. We're eking slightly into networking time, but I also really want to know your recommended reads. So let's do a quick round robin. Go on, Laura.
So I have never ever read a romantic book, but I've just been given Fourth Wing. I'm really excited. I'm like, apparently this is the book that you need to get started on with romantic, so I can't wait. But I've also just started reading The Pairing, which is the new book from Casey McQuiston, author of Red, White and Blue. It's amazing. Honestly, it's so good. It's, yeah, if you love like queer, if you love Red, White and Blue, you will love this. It's an amazing queer love story and it's incredible. So yeah, really liking that.
I know I said at the beginning of the talk that I don't use social media that much, but I've been fully influenced by Book Talk on this one, and I'm reading a funny story by Emily Henry. It's my first Emily Henry book, and I'm really enjoying it. It's just a lot of fun.
I have also never read a romantic book, I'm really sorry. I am reading a proof of ours at the moment in preparation for my holidays called One Wrong Turn by Chris Ewan. And I'm just going to give you the plot because who won't want to pick it up after I say this? Some man is driving alone at night and he sees a family stranded on the side of the road. You can't leave a family stranded on the side of the road in the middle of the night. So he picks them up and then things go terribly, terribly wrong for this person. No good deed goes unpunished.
Ooh, I've got chills. Oh, that was a great note to end on. Brilliant. Okay, so last but not least, just want to say a huge thank you to our panel. Well done. If you're not already, we'll get the screen working in again in just a second, but you'll be able to cast your phone over the screen. And please, I know that everyone at events always says, please give us your feedback, but genuinely, like there are humans on the other side that read and comb through your feedback just so that we can plow that back into what we do in the future and create more events that are going to serve you well. So there'll be a QR code that pops up on the screen, scan it, takes a couple of minutes, and just let us know if you found it useful and just any other feedback. We'll also, as a follow-up to this event, share around a link to the event to the opportunity that's live with us at the moment, that Pan Macmillan editorial internship, which closes on the 27th of this month. So if you're thinking maybe, just go for it, throw your hat in the ring. Yeah, that's it. That's all the gump from me. So stretch out, and there's loads of lovely drinks, soft drinks, snacks, various bits in the back. So go grab something. Lou's are just here. And final point is we have allocated one book for everyone and a tote bag. So please stick to the one book rule. I know that there's loads of really wicked things on the table. But yeah, feel free to have a little browse and see which one suits you best. But yeah, have fun networking and hopefully chat to some of you. Cheers.
You were very It did get a bit too complicated. Round. Reminding me that there was much